Marc Jackson, NBC Philadelphia, with us here. So now that the Sixers, Mark, have kind of, are past that first week, the moratorium's over, all the signings are official. Let's start off with you and get your thoughts on what the Sixers did so far. Do you think that this team today, as they sit, is better than the team that walked off the court against the Celtics?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, hands down. This is a better defensive team. They have a few more playmakers. I'm impressed because they improved. I'm still a little disappointed because we ain't made no big splash in another way, but I'm going to roll with it. So to answer your question, 100%, this team is much better with the nucleus they have now.
Yeah, I think everybody that had any ideas that they would get a LeBron James or maybe a Paul George, or they could still trade for Kawhi Leonard. But if you take a step back and become objective and say, all right, if you're going to say you weren't a player for those guys, really, I got to continue to build the team I have here. I think they've done that, but kept themselves in play to take another swing next year.
Agreed. I concur with that statement. This team has put themselves in a position to make more moves, but not just. Let's not talk about the moves now. They've added some major pieces. They've added Landry Shamet from Wichita State, who's a very good point guard. He's a very good point guard. They've added Zaire Smith, who is a athlete who's learning to be more of a playmaker, who's learning to be more of a ball-dominant type of player. So they've come back more defensively prepared. Markelle Fultz being healthy from the start of the season, hopefully, that gives them a notch. Signing J.J. Redick back. They've become a deeper team, a better team. So even if they don't get another playmaker, another superstar, they have enough talent to still compete for the Eastern Conference Finals.
Mark, I think you mentioned it a couple times. I talked about it with the guys here before. I think the message was clear. They didn't hit on the stars that they wanted, so let's refocus. And they decided that they had to be a more athletic defensive team on the perimeter, and that's why they were okay letting Marco and Ersan go and bringing in Wilson Chandler and going after Zaire Smith. Not to mention they get Bjelica and they bring JJ back, so they kept their shooting but got more athletic defenders out on the wing, where last year Rocco was the only wing defender they had. They've added a couple of more guys. That was really their message this offseason, to me anyway.
Agree with you. They knew what was the problem with Boston. We couldn't guard. They were too versatile, and we could not guard them. They attacked the mismatch. They attacked JJ. They attacked Ersan. They attacked Bellinelli. To the point that Coach Brett Brown had to alter his lineup as far as the way he does his rotation because it's so obvious that they was attacking the 76ers. I thought Brett Brown did an exceptional job as his first time being a general manager of making the roster better, building through the draft. Now, those guys who you pay that big money to now in player development, you have to earn every dime and get these guys better and do it that way and not say, well, hopefully we can get Kawhi. Let's say worst case scenario. We don't get to scratch our heads and see, do we really want to empty the well and give up all our young good talent to bring in one player? Let's rethink that a little bit.
Marc Jackson with us. So you say rethink it a little bit, but then there were people, when the Wilson Chandler move happened, did you see that as adding Wilson Chandler, or do you see that as adding Wilson Chandler so that the war chest gets bigger so they could go maybe make that move that you're discussing?
I think it made them deeper. I think Wilson Chandler is, first of all, he's always been underrated his entire career. I think they get a better defense, a player that's similar in defense as Rocco, but he has the ability to put the ball on the floor and create for himself and other people. Respectfully, Rocco currently is a spot-up shooter as well as a defender. He is a 3-and-D kind of guy, but you cannot expect Rocco to put that ball on the floor and create. When he puts that ball on the floor, you kind of like panicking, like, okay, there's a possibility of a turnover. With Wilson Chandler, you get a defender You get a player who's not as good as a three-point shooter as Rocco, but he's still a good three-point shooter. But you also get another guy who can create his own bucket. So he's another person that Boston has to worry about guarding. What they have to worry about with J.J. Bellinelli and Erstein, just make him put the ball on the floor and we win that battle. Well, Wilson Chandler, you can't do that. You have to guard him. So that's another person for the 76ers to get better with.
Yeah, I saw the description of him was Swiss Army knife, that he can fit in every role. The only concern was, at least when he was still a Nugget, there were articles out there that at times you got the good Wilson Chandler and the bad Wilson Chandler. Like, he played 30 minutes one time, didn't score a single point. I mean, I guess everybody's allowed an off night.
Exactly, but also he don't have to. He does not have to carry. He don't have to worry about carrying the payload. He doesn't have to worry about doing things, being consistent at, because they have their guys who's going to score buckets. I really believe that Fultz is going to give them 15 points a game this year. I truly believe that. I believe that they just need more guys. All right, I look at it like this. I remember we talked about this a year ago, guys, that what is the European model of winning championships? The European model is similar to Golden State. In Europe, they don't have not one guy. The best teams in Europe do not have any guys that average 20 points a game. They have a bunch of guys that average 13 points a game. Why? Because they're harder to defend. They have more players that can pass, dribble, shoot. They don't have one player that specializes in one thing. They have more players that can pass, dribble, shoot. And that's what the 76ers are trying to do. They're trying to go more to the Spurs mentality of how to do things. And, so I like Wilson Chandler in that.
Yeah, Marc Jackson's with us, NBC, Philadelphia, Sixers pre- and post-game. And, Sixers, I think everybody got caught up when Brett Brown said, we are star hunting or star developing. And you heard that star hunting and just figured, okay, it's got to happen right now. And if they don't do it, it's a failure. But the fact is, they took a swing after the biggest guy in the league, and they didn't get him. But the fact that they're in that conversation, does that make them somewhat interesting for free agents down the road? Do you think the fact that they were able to meet with Rich Paul, the agent for LeBron James, will that help them in trying to lure free agents down the road?
Yes. Why? Because the 76 are on a different page, different mindset. We think about in years past, if they had tried to get a meeting with LeBron, they would have laughed. They're like, really? What you want a meeting for? You don't need for us to meet? You want to talk to me about my son? You ain't talk to me about me. That's what LeBron would have said, came back with. But now, the Sixers have earned respectability in the NBA. Everyone knows that they're trying to do things differently. They're trying to win. And now they've put themselves in a position, not just they're trying to win, but they have the pieces to win. So I truly believe that the 76ers have earned the respect of free agents, that they will ultimately get a chance to maybe get a free agent, and if not LeBron. Maybe next year when Kawhi becomes a free agent, maybe it's something they have a chance to do. And other free agents, because the 76ers have earned a little bit of respect. So now they have a chance. And if you have a chance, you're winning in the ball game to start with.
The team they brought in now, pretty interesting. You mentioned Wilson Chandler, gives them another wing defender, a guy who can complement Rocco. Maybe those two guys, split more time, so Rocco's not out there as much as he was in the past. You brought in Bjelica, who's a guy who's 6'10", can shoot the three, 41%. I think they feel like he's probably a better shooter than Ersan was. Then Zaire, better wing defender. But the wild card, Mark, it's got to be Fultz, right? He's the wild card in all of this. Do we all agree on that?
And he's the ace of spades, man. He is the wild card. So, we go back, we think about Coach Brett Brown going out to see him work out, going to see what he's doing, things like that. That was because he's a major part of this program. When we go back to next year, we needed a third guy that can give us points, that can give us some more ball handling, and that can create off the dribble, that can hit the open shot, that can defend. And Fultz has checked all those categories in college. Now, with the shoulder thing, we still question his ability to shoot the ball. I still think he's a very good ball handler. He can create for himself and others get into the room. He's a very good defender. He's an underrated defender. So he checks those boxes. We just hope that whatever he's doing now, he comes back and shows some sign of a resemblance of the ability to shoot the ball like he used to.
Marc Jackson with us. Mark, what do you know about, did you ever go to a shooting coach yourself? What do you know about Drew Hanlon? What do you think the program is that he's putting Fultz on to try and get him to improve? Questions like that are what I want to ask you.
You know what? I never personally had to do with a shooting coach because my mechanics is unbelievably awesome. So I never needed a shooting coach. But I have been on every team I've been with. I've had teammates that come in and hire shooting coaches. That's a big ticket thing. You know, but shooting is so important to the game of basketball that if you can shoot the ball, they can find room. You can shoot and you can defend. You always have a place in the NBA. So shooting is a valuable asset to have. And a lot of teams, so when I was at the Sixers, Chris Webber, who's always been an incredible shooter, going back to his high school days, he was struggling that last year in Sacramento before he got traded to Philadelphia. So he brought the shooting coach to Philadelphia to work with him because he was struggling. And so people who are known shooters can sometimes go through spouts where they lose it. And now they got to figure out, how do I get it back? And you just need some reminding on certain key fundamentals on your mechanics to help you get back to those things.
So even established shooters can use a little tune-up at times. Marc Jackson talking with us here about the Sixers and their offseason moves in the Summer League. Mark, did you see enough from Fultz last year in terms of maybe his first step or his explosion and the ability to get to the basket and slash to say that he can be a scorer in this league?
Yes. I think his confidence, I think his size, I think his skill set makes me believe he will be a scorer in this league. He will be. I don't question it. People are down on him, killing him because his shoulder, has a bum shoulder. He's a broken product. You know, whatever you want to say about this guy, I truly believe, as a player who's been playing basketball since I came out the diapers, that I truly believe watching him, he's going to be a player in this league. People are so fascinated with the ability to shoot the ball, and his shot is ugly. He's just, even without that, even if he come back 50% of what he was in the ability to shoot the ball in Washington, I think he's going to be a scorer. I really believe that. How much can he score? I don't think he'll be 18 to 20 until he can get his shooting mechanics back. But I think his ability to create, I think his mid-range game will be back next season. I think he has the ability and the skills and the genetics to become a scorer in this league.
Now that's Markelle Fultz. What if Ben comes back and he still can't shoot? Any concern there?
Now let's talk about that. You asked, if anybody hired a shooting coach, right? I've seen personally. People can hire whoever they want, but you have to have an open mind and a willingness to change something that's broken. Some players feel that, well, I got here, so whatever I did was working perfectly. I don't need that. I'm really curious to see who's been working with. It's not enough to get in the gym and get some shots up. So I heard Reggie Miller, the Hall of Famer, say, if you get in a shot and shoot enough shots, you can always make shots. I disagree. And who am I to argue with a Hall of Fame shooter? But for me, if your mechanics are not quite there and you're jacking up 1,000 shots with the wrong mechanics, it's not going to get better. You're just working on shooting the same shot a bunch of times. So I wonder if Ben Simmons is actually working with somebody who's breaking down his mechanics. And so, look, Ben, I think you might need to change this. Now, what kind of person is Ben? Is he the kind of person like, no, man, you see my stats this year? I don't need to change nothing. Or is he the guy to say, you know what, I agree with you, you're right, what do you see? I'm curious on that on Ben Simmons. Ben needs to work on his shooting to be the caliber player we all foresee him to be, but I wonder if he's open-minded enough to do that. And I don't know him personally to that note to answer that. But if I'm the Sixers, I'm praying he is.
Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN. It's an interesting point because we haven't heard a lot about Ben or what he's done to work on his shot. Though we've heard about his love life, but not a lot about his game during this offseason. I don't know if that's a concern to you or not. I do want to ask you, Mark, because I know you're you've been a big Rashawn Holmes guy. Amir Johnson coming back. What does that signal to you, and how did you feel when you saw that news?
That shocked me. It shocked me. Now, I know Rashawn Holmes did not have a choice because the 76ers had the option. But correct me if I'm wrong, did I read that his contract is CJ's not guaranteed until a certain date?
Yeah, they both got non-guaranteed deals.
So I don't expect Rashawn Holmes to be on a roster come from training camp.
Yeah, I was a little surprised, too, they brought Amir back. You know, the only way – the one thing that I could see possibly, Mark, would be maybe they brought him back because he's a good guy in the locker room to help work and teach, and then him and Holmes flip-flop roles maybe. But I was a little surprised just like you.
I was surprised. So, like I said, if this was a player's option, that option would not have got picked up. So, now that it was a team option, it got picked up. So, now we're going to see – is Coach Brett Brown comfortable with playing him over Amir? If we go back, I don't know if you remember that right before the playoffs, Rashawn Holmes was getting some playing time. He was putting up some good numbers. Do you might remember this?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Molly, who's no longer with NBC, unfortunately, Molly asked JJ, man, Rashawn Holmes has been playing some extraordinary basketball lately. And the first thing out of JJ's mouth was, well, you know, Rashawn Holmes has been coachable lately, so coach is playing him. And that stuck out to me, and I've never forgot it. Everything else after that has been irrelevant. But for me, from the state that's saying maybe that the coaches be trying to work with him and actually do certain things, and maybe he's not a coachable guy. Maybe he gets some lip back. Maybe he doesn't like what they're saying. And Brett Brown's like, look, dude, you're not on our page, so I'm not going to play. So I will never forget that. So what goes on in this year is what comes back to that comment that JJ made about him.
You know, Mark, sometimes you have to read the tea leaves when you see those comments, and other times guys come right out and say what they're thinking, like Jonah Bolden, who says, I'm going to be a part of the Sixers moving forward. But we just talked about how tight the roster spots are. What are your thoughts on Jonah Bolden if the Sixers do part ways with Rashawn Holmes?
So far in 2 games, I'm very disappointed in Bolden. I expected Jonas Bolden to come in here and fight for some quality minutes at the 3 position, maybe even the 4 position, maybe even the 3 position. But he has in 2 games, he has not impressed. Respectfully, I'm not being hard or criticized. I was his biggest fan last year. I was saying that personally, he should have stayed last year and not went back to Europe, because I think he should have forced the 76ers hand to either play him, trade him, or cut him. And that was a similar situation with me when I was at Golden State. I went to Europe for 3 years, and they wanted me to go back to Portland. I said, heck no, I'm not going back. I know I can play in this league. I'm better than half your big men, so I'm going to force your hand. Either play me, cut me, or trade me. And they ended up playing me, and I got my big deal. If I was him, I wanted him to stay last year and force their hands, but he chose to go back. So now that he's here, he's not doing quite what he did last summer. So for me, I'm kind of scratching my head. But if he can get back to how he was last year before he went to Maccabi Tel Aviv, he's a player that should be fighting for some rotational minutes.
Yeah, I agree. I've been a little disappointed from what I've seen in the first couple of games here. Do you look at Korkmaz as a guy they look at as a replacement or upgrade over Bellinelli?
Now, listen, man, we are hitting the cylinders on the head today, fellas. So listen, for me, I thought Furkan he can be a younger version of Bellinelli. I truly believe that. I thought he's played in Europe. He's similar to Luka Doncic, means he's been playing professionally in Europe for a while. He's seasoned. He's been getting beat up. He's playing with grown men. So I was thinking maybe this is time. They say let's get a shooter who's a slight bit, he's about the same height as Bellinelli. His shooting technique is similar. His shooting percentage will be similar. I think he's a better defender than Bellinelli. I thought maybe this is the time they get this young guy a chance. But he has 47 the first game, 4 in the second one. I think that people want to take the summer league with a grain of salt. I truly believe that you have to do the math as a player and say, I got to show this team that I can be a consistent scorer on this team and a consistent shooter while I can get some backup minutes to JJ. So rotational minutes at the 8th, 9th, or 10th position for the 76ers consistently. And so far, they have 47 and they have 4. We know one thing, he likes 4. But it can't be 4 consistent, at least be 14 consistent.
Yeah. Marc Jackson, NBC Philadelphia, is with us, of course. Any interest in Carmelo Anthony? There's been some reports that the Sixers have interest there. Would you have any interest in bringing Carmelo here?
No. And Carmelo's a friend of mine. And I'm going to be honest. I love him. But I wouldn't want to see him with the 76ers. Why? Because he wants to start.
Yeah.
Why? Can Dario come off the bench? I think Dario will be much more effective off the bench. I said it last year, and I said it again this year. But respectfully, I think he will want too many touches than what Ben Simmons and Joel will be willing to give, and Markelle Fultz will be willing to give him. And I don't think he's quite in that position yet mentally where he's ready to accept that. If he did, he would stay with OKC.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, unless literally this guy, I mean, wherever he goes at this point, he was almost going to have to take the veterans minimum because everybody's capped out. You would almost have to have him agree to say, look, you're going to have to take the minimum and you're going to have to accept the roll off the bench. If he said he was willing to do all that, would you be interested?
No. Now, I know Brett Brown is a player's coach. Everybody loves him. But I do not want to see a situation comes where he butt heads with Brett Brown, and it can cause problems in the kink of the armor.
Yeah.
Chemistry issues with the 76ers. I think it's too big of a risk.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that move either.
That's exactly what I want to ask you, Mark. Since you say you know him and you love the guy, what do you make of the chemistry issues that he's had in the different places that he's gone? It seems like despite his unbelievable basketball talent, the talent that he lacks is being able to get along with all his teammates.
You know, that's been the thing. He's an alpha male. He's been a consistent scorer. The biggest thing for a player to admit when they can't do no more is score the ball. You know, that's an ego thing. That's an ego thing. And I'll tell you this. One of my favorite coaches who's never coached me a day in his life was Herb Brown, Larry Brown's brother. I remember going back to college when he told me, Mark, you're my favorite player of all time. Then when I came to the NBA and I got drafted and I went to Europe, he said, Mark, you're still my player of all time. Don't go to Europe. Come to the NBA. Then when I finally decided to come, he said, man, you're my man, Mark, I love you, man. You're my best player. You're my favorite player of all time. And this is Herb Brown, Larry Brown's brother. And then after my first year, he came to me and said, I don't like you no more. And I said, why? He said, because you know you can score the ball now. That means you're not going to do the other things that you've done so well that's important. So, and that was the ego thing. And that was a thing that when you are a scorer and when you perceive yourself as a scorer, it's hard for you to accept the fact that maybe on this team scoring may not be what they need you to do.
It's a you hear that name Melo and you almost feel bad that it's gotten to this point for a player like that. You look at he was in the draft with LeBron, Dwayne Wade, and where LeBron is and still going, and some of those guys are running out of gas. It just shows you how much superior LeBron James is athletically and is just as a freak individual than guys who were great during their time, but they are running out of gas. So we'll see where the Sixers go. So overall, Marc Jackson, you think the Sixers have improved and have had a good offseason?
Yeah, I think they had a very good offseason. If I was to get him a grade for offseason, I give him a B.
Mm-hmm.
I give him a B. I will not give him an A, no matter what people say. I would not give him an A.
Yeah.
I would definitely give him a B. They will only get a B if they land Kawhi.
Would you trade Fultz in a deal for Kawhi or Saric?
I wouldn't give them both. I would let them pick either or, but I would not give them both. I would not.
All right.
They cannot get both because that's depleting you. You got young talent. Dario has been. Ben had went through his issues where he can hit shots, he won't hit shots. Sometimes he wants to score, then he don't want to score. Joel has had his issues with injuries. Dario has been a consistent bright spot.
Yeah. One thing too that we haven't brought up a whole heck of a lot is we everybody talks about the star hunting, but they leave out star developing. How much better a player like Joel Embiid can get from 1 year to the next. Ben Simmons can get from 1 year to the next. Dario Saric can get. These are first and second year players that you were counting on to be your main players. Star developing gets lost in that comment a lot, Mark.
It does. But see, that's why now the hiring of player development personnel is so important, because now that players are losing money to leave their home team, it's hard. It's going to be hard to get guys to leave. So you got to develop what you draft. So that means you have to make those guys better that you drafted or you signed. So with that being said, Joel Embiid was hurt for 3-4 years, and he got better while he was hurt. How is that possible? That first of all, that's saying the guy's a freak. He's a freak of nature. I don't think he's human. How you get? It's like Pookie said in Friday. How you get fired on your day off? Which means how you get better while you hurt? How do you improve from college to the NBA while you hurt every year? It's impossible.
Yeah,
it's not. Which means that whoever the time that he was able to be on the court, those player development guys and Joel's mental capacity to want to listen, to want to get better, to want to change, says a lot about him as a player.
Great stuff. Marc Jackson on Twitter at Jacko2544 as he joins us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Mark, how's the camp going?
Hey, camp's going good, man. Camp's going good. It's been extraordinary. So proud of these young players coming in, wanting to get better. Kids traveling as far as Georgia, South Carolina, Florida. You know, these guys come in, man, and it's going to be bigger and better next year. This is my first event I did like this in Philadelphia, and it turned out to be a big thing. So happy.
You are star developing, my friend.
Very much so.
Appreciate the time as always, pal.
Developing at a young age.
Take care, Mark.
Have a good one, guys.